In 1993, the film Fire in the Sky was released. This film is based off actual events that happened in 1975 in Snowflake, Arizona. So this film documents more or less what actually occurred. There is obviously some embellishments for film, for Hollywood, that you are going to get, especially when you're doing something based off an actual alien abduction. But this is the most covered alien abduction in United States history and probably the history of planet Earth. It was worldwide news when it happened in 1975 out in the White Mountains of northeastern Arizona. The movie, though, Fire in the Sky, released in 1993. D.B. Sweeney plays Travis Walton. Travis Walton is the individual who was abducted, quote unquote, by aliens. Now, the story is vast and it has a lot of ins and outs. I'm going to try to give you the movie synopsis and a synopsis of what actually happened and refer you to the Travis Walton documentary that came out about 10 years ago that I think is definitely worth a watch. So in 1993, this film gets put out documenting those 1975 events of the alien abduction of Travis Walton. So in the film, it shows D.B. Sweeney plays Travis Walton. He's kind of like a dreamer, you know, he seems like he's a little bit of a daydreamer. At least that's the way Travis Walton's presented in the Hollywood version of the events. You know, his best friend, Mike Rogers, is the boss of this logging company. They're all on this logging project. There's a contract for it. And we got Craig Sheffer, who plays Alan Dallas. Those are the only three names of the men on the crew that are actually real, and they're real life names. Alan Dallas, Mike Rogers, and Travis Walton. The other members, the names in the film are different than the actual individuals who were on the actual crew and witnessed this happen. I imagine they didn't sign their likeness over and they didn't want anything to do with it. Something like that. But the names are all different. The film, though, you'll notice Henry Thomas from E.T., of course. Later of Mike Flanagan TV shows on Netflix. He was in The Haunting of Hill House. He was in Midnight Mass. And, you know, if you know Henry Thomas, he was in The Quest and he was in a bunch of stuff. Anyway, not the Jean-Claude Van Damme Quest. Not that one. But Robert Patrick, of course, the T-1000 plays Mike Rogers. Again, Peter Berg plays one of the crewmen on this. And it's Bradley Gregg, who was Eyeball Chambers in Stand By Me. He was also Philip in Dream Warriors. So a really fun, interesting cast. But here's the thing. The movie does have some embellishments, and we'll get to those. But the actual event in 1975, this logging crew was out working, normal day. Alan Dallas is kind of like in the way the movie portrays him, he's kind of like a loner, kind of a bad apple, has troubles with the law. I don't know if the real Alan Dallas had troubles with the law. I don't think he did. He's since passed away, unfortunately. But Mike Rogers was the crew foreman. They work a little late. They see a quote unquote fire in the sky. They see something glowing in the trees, and they get close enough to it coming around as they're leaving the work site, which is granted, it's just the forest. It's just the forest. It's not a legitimate work site. They're in the forest cutting down trees. So they get upon it. They turn the corner or whatever, leaving the woods, and they see a craft. Travis Walton gets out of the truck and gets near it, and he gets zapped and shot to the ground. The truck takes off, and they realize that they just left their friend for dead. They turn back to go see if he's there, and he is gone. And Travis Walton disappears for 5 days. Now, before Travis Walton returned after 5 days, they obviously thought that the crew had killed him. I mean, what else were you to think? He had disappeared. It was just a weird circumstance. And you obviously have to go with kind of your gut instinct. And in 1975, there had been even less than there is now, reports of alien activity or UFO sightings or anything like that. So before Travis Walton returns from this, from being, pretty much a missing person, they are all thought that they are involved with this. The disappearance of him, they are involved in a murder or something. So the entire town, for 5 days, thinks that Travis Walton is dead, and his boss and best friend, Mike Rogers, Alan Dallas, the rest of the crew, all had something to do with the disappearance of Travis Walton. So you throw that in there, and then when Travis Walton actually shows back up, what's authorities to do but again to not believe them and to think that then Travis Walton was somehow tied into it and it was all a hoax, and it just kept going it just kept going on and on and on and on. And obviously they didn't believe him beyond that. Travis's brother, who was not on the crew but wanted to make sure that everything was wrapped up as far as like, could they find an inaccuracy? The lie detecting tests, they aren't admissible in court. They still aren't. But, it seems, at least from research I've done and what I know from lie detector tests, is they err more on the side of being inaccurate. If you're telling the truth, it could show you're lying due to nervousness or anxiety or anything like that. And sociopaths have been known to trick lie detecting tests and prove on the lie detecting results that they're telling the truth, even though they aren't, because they're a sociopath and they are calm or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, Travis's brother, Mike Rogers, Alan Dallas, the other crew members all take polygraphs. One of them, and in the movie, it was Alan Dallas's, who had kind of like a rivalry with Travis on the film, but not in real life. I don't think there was really much contention. They just kind of didn't like each other, at least from everything that I've seen. And his was a little inconclusive, but they all passed. Like, none of them showed deception. And for that at the time, that was huge. And that kind of backed their whole story up because none of their stories ever changed. I know at some point Mike Rogers and Travis Walton had a falling out and they didn't see eye to eye. And then Mike Rogers said it was all a hoax and then recanted that and said, no, my original story aligns with everybody else's and it's always been the same. Now, there was a theory that it was all a hoax to get out of the logging contract, that Mike Rogers was somehow involved with Travis Walton to get out of the contract because there was issues with the contract. I think the job was too big, things like that. Anyway, that has more or less been debunked. You can look into it a million different ways. Now, the film shows the abduction when when D.B. Sweeney, who plays Travis Walton, has a flashback, and you see him, escape out of the little like flesh pod. He's going in there. He's accidentally flying into somebody. It looks like he's going into like a zombie innards when he flies into the flesh pod of someone else that was seemingly abducted. That was all for effect. That was all Hollywood because they wanted to make it genuinely scary. And when I saw this film as a young kid in the mid-90s, this scared the hell out of me. They did a great job Hollywoodizing, or lack thereof for a term, making it Hollywood scary because it wasn't that scary. Travis Walton has since said he doesn't view it as necessarily a scary experience in hindsight. Now he obviously in the moment you're terrified because you're seemingly abducted by aliens. But what he says is they performed tests to what he thought. But when they zapped him, he thinks he died and they actually abducted him to revive him and heal him. At least that's what he thinks now. He doesn't feel like there was malice in anything they did. The documentary that Travis Walton had put out on himself and the entire story back in, I think, 2015, and then it got a wider release during COVID, the Travis Walton story, where they document stuff that really reinforces that this probably more than likely really happened just as Travis Walton, Mike Rogers, Alan Dallas, and the rest of the crew had said. Because there's things like they're testing the rings on cut down trees on the stumps where they're growing. The stumps are growing, and they're growing 3 times the size that they normally would have. And these are big trunks to begin with. These are the same tests they ran on these tree trunks where the abduction happened are similar to tests that were ran on trees and their rapid growth at Chernobyl after the events of Chernobyl happened and the radiation and the nuclear fallout and everything. So high levels of radiation. If you know anything about alien abduction or anything like that, I suggest you watch some documentaries because there's plenty to. I mean, when you get into the crop circles too, they test the soil, they test crops and things like that, and they see higher levels of radiation that are severely abnormal by a large degree for sites like a cornfield, or in this case, a logging field, pretty much the woods, the wilderness. And, this is 1975 when this happens. People are obviously in disbelief. We live in a world now where, being told aliens exist doesn't really frighten anybody. It really doesn't even people are like, yeah, of course, whatever. Like, they don't really care. I do think that what we perceive as aliens and what we perceive as extraterrestrials and UFOs and things like that, I think they, and when I say they, I mean the collective they, be it the government, be it higher powers, whatever you want to call extraterrestrial beings, the powers that be, whatever they may be, I think it is very reassuring to them that we think in very blanket terms as far as an alien in outer space and UFOs. It's much easier to maintain what's going on if people are looking to the sky all the time and they're not looking elsewhere. I think there's a lot that happens on Earth that is right in plain sight. I could go on and on about what my thoughts and beliefs are, or what my hypothesis is, and what I hypothesize and what I kind of think could be going on, but it's all a guess. We're all guessing. I will say I've seen things, I've had things happen, and I think they're all connected, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't really want to get down a rabbit hole of talking about the supernatural, but because that's really not what this channel is about. Maybe it will be. Maybe someone's going to love this video and they're going to want me to tell those stories, but probably won't happen. Regardless, the film itself, obviously it comes out, it's pretty lackluster. Like, people just, I don't think it was promoted all that well. And while it was a great story, it definitely found life on VHS, and it found life in video stores, and now it's found more life. Imprint put this Blu-ray out in I think it came out in 2020, because two of the interviews, I think this came out in late 2020. Two of the interviews were audio only, and it was D.B. Sweeney, who plays Travis Walton in this, and Robert Patrick, the old T-1000, plays Mike Rogers. Both of their interviews are both audio. And I think they even mentioned something about having to do only audio at the time, because when they were putting this together, it was peak COVID. Shout Factory has since put out, or Scream Factory has since put out a release of this. I don't know if it's a new scan or anything like that. It looked like all the special features were ported over from this, but this Imprint version of it is really nice, and it's got a nice, if you know Imprint, they do a great job. Nice little side slipper right there, and they have the scene in the movie where he's abducted and he's being, quote unquote, tested on, again, where it was made for Hollywood to be super wild, and they did a great job, and it was very frightening, and it made you not want to ever think about being abducted. And they did a great job of that. Via Vision puts this out in Imprint, and it's a great release. Now, what you actually believe, could it all be a hoax? Could the whole Travis Walton story be a hoax? It's possible, but to get 7 people, that's the 5 crewmen, Travis Walton, who was also part of the crew, Travis's brother Dwayne, all take lie detector tests and all pass. None of them ever changed their story. Travis Walton lost jobs. Yes, I'm sure there was a lucrative aspect to this once, the Unsolved Mysteries era of the world came out in the 90s, and the film comes out, you obviously sell your story or whatever. I'm sure he made a little bit of business, and there was some lucrative, deals being made. But to a large degree, it's really hard to say the 6 crewmen are all lying. They're all liars. And it would have to be something pretty profoundly important to protect it for this long. You could also compare it to the moon landing. Yes, those guys the stories have changed, though, with the moon landing. You talk about the astronauts, Buzz Aldrin, and when you talk about the moon landing, there's a lot more. I feel like that is more likely that it didn't happen than the Travis Walton story, and I think that says a lot right there. Now, the film itself is very fun. It's very fun, but I think it's a reminder that we should always keep a skeptic ear open. But I think we should also be very aware that if a lot of people say one thing, sure, it doesn't always mean it's true. But to have a lot of people say the same thing and have it never change, and say it for over 40 years, 50 years now, over 50 years now, the people that are still alive that were there, I know a couple of the crew members have passed. Alan Dallas has passed. It gets harder and harder to disbelieve, especially with what we know and what we've seen with our own eyes. People who were not born in 75, like myself. People who were only a child when this film came out in 1993. It makes you really wonder what actually happened and why. But at the very least, we got a film that is obviously a work of fiction to a degree, but this is no doubt based off the true story of the Travis Walton abduction in 1975, November 5th, 1975, in the White Mountains of Arizona. It makes you wonder. The film is very great. It's very well done. Acting is superb. Peter Berg, again, Henry Thomas, Bradley Craig, Craig Sheffer, amazing. D.B. Sweeney, Robert Patrick. It's an all-star cast. They're great. But if you have the opportunity to watch the film, and then if you have the opportunity to watch the many interviews that Travis Walton's given over time, and to watch the Travis Walton story documentary that came out roughly 10 years ago, I highly implore you to do so, because it makes you, at the very least, think. And this is by far the most widely publicized and covered alien abduction story that we've ever heard. And to know that Travis Walton now does not view it as a negative alien abduction, he obviously wishes it never happened. He says that in the documentary, but hey, he believes they were helping him. So that's also interesting. And but Fire in the Sky, the film, is super creepy. It's well acted, very entertaining for a movie that's a little less than 2 hours. What is an hour and 49 minutes? It's worth your time. And the story of Travis Walton is definitely worth your time. If you are familiar with the case, let me know below. I know there's a lot of naysayers still. I am not. I believe what they say happened. Obviously, again, there's some dramatic liberties taken for Hollywood's sake in this film, Fire in the Sky. But have you seen Fire in the Sky? Do you like Fire in the Sky? And where do you sit with the Travis Walton story? Are you a believer or are you a skeptic?